Народ, значит, на днях у меня было видео с Арандом. Аранд — это глава канадской семьи, многодетная канадская семья, которая переехала 9 месяцев назад из Канады в Нижний Новгород. Они фермеры, строят ферму, хотят открыть продуктовый какой-то там магазин, эко-деревню, мастерскую, строительную компанию даже. Если вы не смотрели то видео, обязательно пройдите на несколько видео назад, и там будет программа Roundtable, я ее перевел, а потом будет интервью, все в одном видео. Называется «Западные СМИ говорят про указ Путина. Переедут ли иностранцы сегодня в Россию?» Так вот, в этой передаче The Roundtable там был гость Джозеф.
Мы свалили из России осознанно. Через несколько дней после 24 февраля 2022 года мы решили уехать по идеологическим причинам. Сначала пытались понять, что происходит вокруг, а потом в марте решили, надо валить. Но сегодня что за неожиданный поворот? Жители западных стран переезжают в Россию. Народ, ну и где я? Я американец, но я не в Америке, это не Америка. Узнаете это место? Вам оно знакомо? Джозеф американец, и он наслаждается жизнью в России. Ну как твоя жизнь в России, если сравнить ее с жизнью в США, которая у тебя была? Слушайте, моя жизнь похожа, да как будто я живу в Америке. Да, и я говорю об этом постоянно всем западным моим зрителям, что это абсолютно нормальное место. Люди, семьи, работы, машины, здания. Здесь все есть, что можно ожидать от нормального западного общества. Все западные люди, когда я приехал, они сваливали, американцы сваливали, и мне говорили, куда ты едешь, уезжай. А если ты останешься, не забудь скупить все оливковое масло, весь сыр пармезан, потому что будут санкции, магазины будут пустые. Мое посольство говорило, уезжай срочно. Но я приехал вместе со своей русской женой, у нас 5 детей. Вначале мы думали немножко пожить на нашем новом месте в России, а потом поняли, что нужно испытать судьбу и решили остаться.
Они из Флориды перебрались в Россию через 8 дней после начала специальной военной операции. Сегодня я поговорил с Джозефом. У нас был прекрасный разговор, мы общались на самые разные темы. Я пытался задать ему вопросы, но где-то не то что провокативные, но мне хотелось понять, как он видит, будут ли иностранцы сегодня пользоваться этим указом Путина.
Владимир Путин недавно подписал указ, который позволяет иностранцам подать заявку на временное проживание в России, если они разделяют общие традиционные российские ценности. Это все было представлено так, что Россия может стать местом жизни для западных граждан, которые отвергают либеральную пропаганду своей страны. Теперь они могут просто жить временно в России, им не нужно учить язык, не нужно знать историю России.
Будут ли американские, канадские, немецкие семьи сегодня приезжать в массовом порядке сюда, в Россию, в Краснодар, в Кемерово, в Читу, либо в Москву, в Питер, либо не будут? Какие это люди? Кто может откликнуться на этот указ? Как они здесь будут жить? Где они здесь будут работать? Какие советы можно придумать и дать им, вот этим людям, которые думают о том, чтобы перевести многодетные семьи свои сюда, в Россию, потому что они не согласны с традиционными вот этими, ну как сказать, местными либеральными ценностями. Хотя в этой передаче The Roundtable они говорят, что традиционные ценности в России особо не отличаются от традиционных ценностей на Западе. Но многие говорят, что уже традиционные ценности на Западе — это либеральные ценности.
Пол, как ты думаешь, что такое традиционные российские ценности? Владимир Путин обращается к западным людям и говорит, если вы разделяете наши традиционные ценности российские, приезжайте. Что это такое? Ну, как я думаю, поправьте меня, если я не прав, но мне кажется, это ценности, которые фокусируются на семье, в первую очередь, также на местном сообществе, да, на местном обществе, также на православной церкви. И вот все эти ценности, они исходят от этих вещей. Мне кажется, эти ценности не особо отличаются от традиционных ценностей на Западе. Также, например, в Турции, либо в какой другой стране. Потому что, ну, ценности — это ценности традиционные. Многие хотят остановить, как бы, это скольжение общества к этим либеральным ценностям, к современным, прогрессивным, индивидуализм. Многие переживают об этом на Западе, да, об этом переживают люди. Так что в этом свете указ Путина недавний и приглашение иностранцам переезжать в Россию, для кого-то это привлекательная тема.
Так вот, те семьи, которые хотят спасти своих детей от этого, поедут ли они сегодня в Россию? Вот об этом мы с Джозефом разговаривали, придумывали самые разные идеи, и я предлагаю послушать наш сегодняшний с ним разговор. Вот только сейчас закончили общаться, и, как говорится, присоединяйтесь, иностранцы переезжают в Россию сегодня.
All right, so how things are going? It is very good to meet you. Very good.
It's good to meet you too, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
So you are Evgeny.
Evgeny, English name is Eugene.
Ah, okay, okay. So you spent time in America or in the West?
I've been there 3 times
Uh-huh.
in Michigan, in California, like everywhere almost. Chicago 3 times. In Michigan, I spent in 2004 like almost 3 months,
Uh-huh. The
and
reason why I ask is your English sounds good.
I've been watching a lot of American movies without translation, so also. And I've been having this, I mean, I was having because we already stopped. For several
Uh-huh.
years with my friend, we were talking only English. It was our game.
Right.
He speaks very English very good because he used to live in the United States. So it was our game for 3 or 4 years almost.
Yeah.
Every time when we met and we spent a lot of time together, so our language was English, even publicly in cafe and restaurants, like everywhere.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I don't know. It was our game, and I got a lot out of that practice.
That's good practice. Well, I don't want your audience to hate me, but you mentioned Hollywood. I actually worked in Hollywood for a few years, but I'm not for Hollywood now. I think Hollywood is corrupt and damaging the world as far as traditional family values is concerned. But I will say that I think that maybe 20 years ago, for a couple of decades, Hollywood did a great job in making the world, I think, sympathetic to Americans in general and Westerners in general. And I think that's why one of the reasons why I'm actually treated nicely here and treated well as a guest in Russia. And I think it's also one of the reasons why there's a lot of Russians that are happy about this idea that Westerners might be moving at a larger rate to their country.
What did you do there?
I was only in it for about 6 years in my 20s. I got out pretty early. I didn't stick around to grow. But I was what they call an assistant director. So that means you're just like doing little menial tasks, whatever they want. You're just a low person on the film set. And then I got a couple jobs as an assistant director where you're assisting the director. The biggest thing that I guess I could say that layman's would know is I did work on one of the Batman movies, the worst Batman movie, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that was my largest claim to fame. And then what happened was I became a father, and I like to say a serious Christian. So my heart was not in the business anymore, and it's so competitive that you have to have a heart for it. And I didn't have a heart for it anymore. My heart was with a family and with God and with my kids. And that's why one of the reasons why I think Russia has been such a great fit for me and for my new life here, because I think Russia is more for traditional family values.
Я здесь, дядя. Я готов. Я практика по-русски.
We will get to this like in a minute. But before, interesting information you are sharing with me. So you were involved in that Hollywood thing. You were not creating movies, screens, like ideas, only technical stuff, right?
Yeah, I was working on the technical end of things because I went to film school at NYU, New York University. They kind of give you a general education to be able to do anything. And I did it because as a young person, I looked at the world and I wanted to be the best. And I saw Hollywood as, the king making place. If you were going to be anything in this world, you would want to be big in Hollywood. Not necessarily a president of a country, but someone famous in Hollywood. So that was my goal, for a good decade, I would say. And they do prepare you to be a director. So if I had stayed in it, I would have done more creative director things, but I didn't stay in it. I mean, doing that laid the groundwork for me to be successful with my YouTube channel. But it's funny because people hear that I'm in Hollywood and they see my channel and they think that I was a creative person in Hollywood, but I wasn't necessarily a creative person. They also think that I was an actor in Hollywood, but I wasn't. I wasn't an actor at all. But with the channel, well, you have to be able to perform, you have to be able to project, you have to be entertaining.
Welcome to Expat American. I am the Expat American. Find out what's going on in Russia right now.
Oh, we started.
Really? Were you a Christian before you moved to Hollywood or before you left Hollywood? What was the time when you realized your Christian values or something?
I became a Christian and got baptized while I was working in Hollywood, and that was the beginning of the end for my Hollywood career. Thank God. that I got out of that, because now, I get to make, basically my own movies. I mean, but I get to be myself. I get to tell the truth. I get to be exciting and funny and interesting for about 20 or 30 minutes. He took me outside in winter to play hockey in the middle of nowhere. He likes the channel. He can't understand English, though, not that well, just choo-choo. And I get to do this every week. Whereas if I was in Hollywood working, I'd be working for the production companies. I wouldn't be myself, and I would have to do everything that they say.
You got married while you were working for Hollywood also.
Yeah, so I'm on my second marriage, unfortunately. I got married when I was in Hollywood and had my first child, and then decided to get out of the business, and I actually opened up a childcare in Florida. So I was living in Florida, running my own childcare business for almost 20 years, and had several kids. And that was the great heartbreak of my life, is that my marriage broke up and my wife left me and the kids. But that was all part of the plan as well, because I ended up meeting a Russian woman and getting married to her. And that's what eventually led me to Russia. And we now have children together as well.
We're in Novorossiysk, and this city was completely destroyed during World War II. So they smashed everything, destroyed all the buildings, everything.
Right. Did you meet each other in the United States?
We physically met in the United States. We went to the same church, an international church. And we happened to be going to a conference in Texas. But even on top of that, apparently we had the same friends. So we were visiting our friends in California. So we actually met for the first time in California, went on a date, and then decided to do another date in Texas. And it went so well, I told her that I would come see her someday. Nice and cheap and romantic and nostalgic. Really?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
But if it snows, it melts quickly.
Someday turned out to be about 6 months later for Thanksgiving 2012. I went to London, and then I went on to Moscow and spent a few days with her. Russian moonshine.
You met in the United States, but she was not living technically in the United States at that time. So
No.
she lived in Moscow. Oh,
Yes.
okay. It was international conference, Christian conference.
Yes, exactly. It turns out we had the same friends, even from the church, even before we got married to our first spouses. So you have to wonder, if we never met our first spouses, if we had waited, would we have gotten married sooner? But she says, no, because we wouldn't be who we are today. We weren't prepared. We weren't scarred enough and ready for each other. Svetlana's stretching her neck out and loving her two little boys.
Great. Okay. And slowly but surely, we are moving to that interesting topic, like latest Putin's decree, moving to Russia and things, in order to build a little bridge to that topic. So you explain it in details in that the Roundtable program. I translated what I translated. So you moved to Russia 8 days before special military operations started. So you moved to Russia at that time, just, I don't know, for curiosity, or to spend some time there, or what was the plan? Because as far as I understood from your words, you were not thinking like deeply staying in Russia while you were moving.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like a committed religious, we're going to do this decision. We had lived in Florida for 9 years together, married, and had a couple kids. We had 5 kids in total from both of our marriages living with us. And my oldest, the baby I'd had in California, he was actually already over here in university. We sent him here because he wasn't sure what to do. And we said, well, that'll be cheaper. So why don't you meet some new people, learn a new culture, and get educated in a more cheap way. So in the meantime, we were coming here for a month at a time, like every 2.5 years. And I kept seeing how wonderful Moscow was. And my wife, after 9 years in America, she was getting homesick. And we have, Christoph, who is now 9, he was almost ready for public school in Russia. So Christoph, what are you going to get? Hachapuri. And we had our other 2 kids, Alex and Aurora, and they were almost ready to go to university. And I said, you know what, hon? Moscow's awesome. Russia's great. I could live there if you want. Why don't we take a turn? We lived together here for 9 years in Florida. Why don't we now go to Moscow just in time for our other kids to go to university, for Christoph to go to grade school? And we were like, sure, this will be great. So she was very happy.
I don't believe it. Oh, so that's not a question for me.
Wait, stop.
Is this your favorite beach?
Hooligan.
Are you a real Russian woman?
Jag har typ stop. You look beautiful.
And we, of course, had no idea about the special military operation. We were just thinking we're going from my country to her country, no problem. But like you said, 8 days later, the SMO happened, and that kind of changed everything. And I was a little bit depressed for a couple months, thinking, did I make a mistake? Did I, mess up my kids' lives here? And if it had happened sooner than we left, I wouldn't have left. Thank God that I did go when I went, because I'm so glad that I'm here, that I'm quote unquote stuck on this side. I mean, not really. I could fly back if I wanted to, but it's more difficult when sanctions happen and there's a war between your country and the other country.
Джо, это город Долгопрудный. Вот это вот. Садись.
Холодно.
Давай, быстрее.
Only right, right.
А ты прыгнула? Вот веревку киньте. Давай, вот так. Спасибо, дядя. Недаром Москва, спаленная пожаром. Мой кожа отдана.
Ай, молодец.
Я сильный.
Спасибо, Россия.
So I'm so glad that we made it here. And after a few months of fretting about it, about being depressed, feeling like I'm behind enemy lines, perhaps, my embassy's telling me to leave, it turned out that I realized, I was trained to make videos, to make video production. I could make videos and people would watch them. And I can say, hey, I'm an American. I'm in Russia. It's okay here. These are normal people. These are not scary people. This is not like a cold, dark, scary place full of bad guys you have to go to war with. These are families with houses and cars and stores and just normal things everywhere that just want to live their lives and raise their children, with traditional family values, which is something that most Americans want as well. Most US citizens want as well. Most Westerners want as well. And so I thought, if I can get that message out in an exciting way and a sometimes funny way and an informative way, that could maybe, even if it just ended the war 3 days sooner, that's lives saved, and I felt called that this was my part to play and I had to do it. After a few months of being depressed.
Я начал свой канал на YouTube и стал на английском говорить западным людям, как здесь хорошо, как нормально здесь в России. К моему удивлению, многие захотели переехать после этого. Представляете, я им рассказывал. Они говорят, мы тоже хотим. Джозеф, скажи, а ты не боишься, что Кремль будет, а может быть уже, использует тебя как пропаганду для своих целей? Что ты скажешь на это?
I heard so many feedbacks from different people regarding channels like yours that you are doing it on purpose as a propaganda because it looks a little bit like you're focusing on one idea. Russia is good, though at the same time there are so many problems in Russia. So many people they think that those channels, which are led by foreigners in Russia, they call it propagandistic channels. Ukrainians, they think very often the same thing. Maybe you saw it in your commentaries under your videos.
Читать классическую литературу.
Possibly due to the fact that these elitists in the Western countries have stopped reading classical literature.
И у них упал культурный уровень.
And their cultural level has fallen by Leo Tolstoy.
Любая, какая нравится.
Like any of his books.
Решения, необходимые благу всего человечества.
Of course, all the time. And, propaganda is good and propaganda is bad. Propaganda is just, promoting a message, right? Promoting a vision. Russia is a huge place. And so Westerners spend their whole lives, watching The Hunt for Red October and watching Rocky IV and just being convinced that Russia is just a cold, dark, scary place. And that's it. They don't think about it. And so all the news stories have been bad for decades, in my opinion, if you're living in the West. So I come here and I'm legitimately shocked that it's like so normal. And on top of that, it's better than normal. I mean, if you're a Russian, you haven't been to the West lately or ever, your place is in general better than the West. I think that Russia has worked so hard for the past 30 years to be like the West that it's now better than the West. And so since I am impressed, I now want to take my camera and I want to show the West what they haven't seen. Yes, I can show bad places and dirty places. There are bad places. Well, probably not dirty places in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but let's say in all of Russia, I can go find bad places and dirty places, but I can do that in America as well, in the US as well. These are both huge countries. You can find anything good or bad in both these countries. And I think that the Western media rules, and they are telling the world Russia's bad. And I'm going to do a tiny bit by telling the world Russia is good. And if people watch my videos, I try to give a full picture here, but I am going to emphasize what I think needs to be emphasized.
Kids playing, families everywhere. Where am I? Drink your beer or whatever and look out at the pool. So, pretty interesting, I think. Ship, which is like a floating museum, so we'll find out what this is. But what country is this? It is actually, believe it or not, Russia.
I agree, and you're making very good point, because I was also accused many times while I was going, and I do it from time to time, to Mariupol, to those areas like so-called new territories, right? I mean, I put it in the quote because West, I'm trying to play to speak from both sides in order to be objective, because West, of course, they don't consider it as a new territories. That's why I'm trying to do this like so-called double view things in order to be objective. So, okay, as a Russian, I'm saying that I'm going visiting those new territories, and I also, I do the same. I know there are many, so-called dirty places there, and people are starving. There are many problems, but I'm trying to show like a new schools, new hospitals, new roads, new something. And very often I was accused. I've been accused actually, because I still do it. And people say, you're a propagandist. You're doing propaganda. Like, why don't you show that demolished building? I know there is a demolished building there, but I want to show you the construction of a new drama theater, which was destroyed 2 years ago in Mariupol. Right now, it's under huge construction. I want to show it to you. And they just like, don't show it to us. Show us bad demolished buildings. Show us truth. But this is also truth. So you see, so I agree. And it's a very good point. Yeah, it's our focus. I want to show good things. Why not?
Welcome to EXPAT American. Today we are going to be going into one of the most famous bookstores in Moscow.
Called Medusa?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I did a show showing a clinic, a polyclinic. We took our youngest to the doctor, and it was really nice. And I put up the video, and people were negatively commenting, well, show us a free clinic. And I was like, oh, no, did I not? And I asked my wife, and my wife's like, that is a free clinic, Joe. So people don't realize that's just an example of how nice it is here compared to the West. We went to a free clinic and it looked so good. They thought that we were paying for like expensive service.
Right. You've been talking a lot about your experience on your channel, or maybe you stopped already. Maybe you were doing it before. But you know what? I really want to ask you, not ask you, but just like to discuss maybe a little bit about others. Not Russians, but Western people, potential Western people, because after that decree, I really don't know. What's your opinion? I don't know how many people will react on that. Westerns from Germany, from Canada, from United States. So what do you think about in terms of numbers?
Well, of course, it's too early to have hard stats, but I can give you a personal anecdote. So my wife had to quit her therapy practice because of our channel to answer calls from Westerners that want to immigrate. And I just checked with her before we came on here. And I said, so hon, how many requests have you gotten in the past month? And she said 200. So, we're a couple months after the decree. I've got a YouTube channel that's 2 years old, and my wife has now had to quit her business, and she has her own now immigration service that she started to help Westerners move here. Actually, she has a website too, by the way. We can put in the link if you want. It's russiaexpats.com. And so she's gotten 200 requests in the past month, and it was higher than that a couple months ago when the decree first happened, because people were very excited and they were very interested, Westerners, in coming. I mean, if you're a Russian, you don't realize, just imagine, you're living in a Western country and you want to raise your kids just like a Russian does. And, your borders are open. So your country's culture is being diluted. Crime is up on the street. So you're literally afraid to go to the park. And I know this because I have lived there, and you are afraid to go to the park, but in Russia, you're not.
Это donut, Svetlana?
Это пончик.
Ah, Russian donut. Christoph, is it root beer? Kvass.
Let's say if your kid is a preteen and they're disturbed emotionally, they're allowed to go to the doctor and make medical requests, severe medical requests, let's say, and you can't stop them. I'm speaking a bit in code here for the algorithm. And on top of that, the DC is just printing money like crazy, which is just affecting the entire world economy. So if and when Westerners learn that Russia is, quote, normal and safe, and it's like, storybook in raising your kids, why wouldn't they want to come here? At the same time, it is expensive. It is difficult. It is a new language. And I think you can't come here if you're just like, oh, this will be cheaper, this will be fun. No, I think you have to feel driven to come here. Like, I have to come here. I've got to come here for my kids' sake.
Вы решитесь на это, если вы будете понимать, что это вам действительно нужно. Дело не в России все нормально. Просто языковой барьер, придется потратиться нормально на переезд. Но с другой стороны, если вы хотите растить своих детей в правильных таких ценностях, а это либеральная пропаганда, просто давит на них со всех сторон. Антирелигиозная культура везде, на Западе, очень много ее. И поэтому вы понимаете, нет, мне нужно переезжать. Да, будет сложно с языком, придется потратиться, но мне нужно это сделать.
Now, it will be better. I think your life will be better, but it will be difficult at first, and it's still going to be normal life, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand you completely. At the same time, I want to ask you this question because I really don't understand. Like, okay, I'm American. I have 3 kids, wife, and I live, let's say, in Chicago area. I don't understand. What's the problem? So cannot I raise my kids in traditional Christian values? Who will push on me? Let's say I'm going to church. I have whatever private school or public school. I have my choice because everybody is saying United States is a free country. So I'm a Christian with traditional values. So what's the problem? You're saying some other people were saying the same. This like propaganda in schools, LGBT values or something. Can you elaborate a little bit? What's the pressure is about?
I just heard a story that in Germany, because my wife was talking to someone who's trying to immigrate from Germany, that they're now making the kids, the boys and girls, go into separate rooms, and they're teaching them how to give themselves pleasure. And this is public school requirements. So you aren't allowed to just live your traditional family values life. And if you're in Chicago, you're going to be stepping over, human feces and drug needles, and you don't know if your children are going to get killed on the street, and that's not an exaggeration. So I mean, they are destroying the fabric of society in the West. I don't, some of them might be evil, but I think some of them, they're just thinking, hey, you know what, maybe traditional family values is not necessary, and let's run this experiment and see if we can just be at best agnostic and just live however we want. And I think the answer is very clear. You can't live that way without destroying society. And I think that is what's happening. I mean, my daughter is 20. She goes to Moscow State University, and she takes the metro to university almost every day. I have not a care in the world that there would be any problem with that. But if we were living in New York or Chicago, there's no way she'd be going by herself to university.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's just terrible, terrible. So dangerous.
For me, Moscow metro station is one of the safest places in the world because police is everywhere, cameras, I mean, like on every meter.
So nice.
So basically what you're saying, if we're talking about United States, maybe Germany, I don't know, you're kind of free to do whatever you want. But at the same time, this freedom allows those ideas to go to kids' head almost on every level, right? Like a kindergarten, school. So you're kind of free, but at the same time, they're saying, all right, you are free to choose between men and women, between that, and maybe they even push kids, as you say, like this experiment or something. There is no aggression, correct? No aggression on you.
I mean, again, another story I heard from Germany is a couple was vacationing with their kids and they went to the pool and someone like yanked at their bathing suit and they were like, no, you can't wear a bathing suit here. This is, you know, the time to be naked. I mean, that sounds kind of aggressive to me, but yeah, I think it's like soft cultural power in the West and you're going to feel guilty and you're going to be pressured. And of course, all the entertainment, you know, is tilted towards anti-traditional family values. And it's done so on purpose where, you know, Hollywood movies and stories, they are like so cool and so well done and like 90% correct, but they're going to throw in that 10% to just mess with your kids' heads.
Ты не знаешь, что, Максим? На, Максим.
Киви, яблоко, лимонад.
Киви, яблочный лимонад.
Right. Let me ask you this then, because we discussed with Arendt his experience in Nizhny Novgorod. He's a farmer. I asked him this question, and it's interesting what's going to be your response to this. Okay, imagine this theoretical family, potential family, let's say in the United States. They have 4 kids, 5 kids. They're Christians, traditional Christians, maybe conservative Christians, maybe they're not that church-oriented, whatever. And they think, all right, so why not to consider to move to St. Petersburg or to whatever Moscow area? But then I'm trying to model their experience. But how are they going to do it? They're not farmers. It's not often to meet farmers, right? My question was to Arendt, a regular foreigner family. How they going to work? You're making videos. You can do it, right? Your wife decided to do this service to help foreigners to come over. But regular family, I really cannot imagine big family coming over to Krasnodar. I'm right now in Krasnodar, at my temporary residence. I cannot imagine this big family from United States coming over to Krasnodar. Where are they going to work? Where? What are they going to do? So all those questions.
So Aaron Feenstra, him and I are friends even before our channels were what they are today. You know, we were talking behind the scenes, and you know, he was still in Canada. And he has come over and he is probably the greatest success story. He's got so many kids. His wife is not Russian. You know, they're living in Nizhny Novgorod, you know, not Moscow or St. Petersburg. And their farm is well underway, you know, being constructed. So he is like the gold standard of how it can be done, right? But like I said before, you know, you need to be passionate about this because it is going to be difficult. I mean, even if you're in your own country and let's say you're 20 or 23 and you're done with university or out of school and now you need a job, that's difficult. You know, it's difficult to get into the workforce. It's difficult to start your business. On top of that, you're going to move to another country when you're a little bit older with kids and do it. It is hard. And right now, you know, because of the sanctions and, you know, the Russian embassies around the world, they're short-staffed because, you know, that they've been kicked out of those countries. So, you know, Putin has started this decree and people are excited, but the infrastructure isn't even yet ready for this thing to roll on, you know. And I think that, you know, Russia needs highly qualified specialists. So if you're a tech person, like an IT person, and we seem to be getting a lot of requests for that, you know, that is good. I mean, that world is an English world as well, not predominant, not exclusively, but it is. Media is also the same way. It's partly an English world, even in Moscow. So if you're someone like me, if you're like a media person, the big thing for Westerners or English speakers, let's say, because they're not all English speakers, is you can make pretty good money teaching English to Russians.
What is your favorite Soviet film?
My favorite Soviet film so far, I have several, but my favorite is 17 Moments of Spring.
But the reality is, it is going to be difficult. I mean, you are right to ask those questions.
There are two levels for me which I cannot understand regarding foreigners. First, this is job. How to find a job, especially if you're a manager or accountant. Even if you know Russian, but to know Russian fluently, that's almost impossible for a Western person. But imagining American person coming to Russia, let's say with a so-so Russian, he's going to local company, I don't know, like logistic company, and he's trying to apply for a job, even though he has all documents, that's going to be impossible. So that's the first level. It's very difficult. Second level, how do they adapt themselves, like in local society? They will appear here in Krasnodar, but then what? They don't know anybody. How?
How was your food? How did you like your food?
I like my food, but it's unusual for me. I'm not a big fan of oysters, I guess, but it's tasty.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're, let's say, a shy guy and you're living in the West and, you're not sure what to do, you're either not going to come. There's the problem of getting acquainted with and assimilating into a new culture, and that's a big problem. But it's smashing into this other problem in the West, which is, are my kids going to be completely lost if I raise them in this culture? So both things are really, really big problems. And for those that come, they're going to make the decision, the calculus, that I've got to save my children. I got to do whatever I can. And I'll go through this difficult thing because it's worth it to me, because it's so hard for them.
Не, Максим, специально не надо.
Oh, Mama says.
This is my favorite so far.
It's better than number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you're like some shy guy, I mean, if you're like, I don't know, a 35-year-old and you're asking me or you're messaging my wife, I mean, I might tell them with my knowledge, start tutoring people Russians, English online, and save your money. You either get your 90-day visa or your 3-year visa and come over here and try to tutor people here as well and slowly grow your business. Like if you have nowhere to start, let's say, but you feel like you have to do this. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. But this is why there are immigration businesses popping up like crazy. And my wife's is one of them, because there's so many logistical hurdles to get through. The biggest thing that is surprising Westerners that want to come, because they don't have this system in the West, is you have to be registered to live somewhere. And that is a true problem where, Russians who have property, if they want to rent it to one of these immigrants that have come over and they're just now here and they're starting to get acquainted, the landlord, the Russian landlord, is going to have to take this immigrant to that office if they want to rent to them and spend like half a day, in line and filling out forms and getting them registered. So one of the problems we see happening is no Russians want to rent to these immigrants. Now, I think Russia as a culture, I would say my guess is it's about 60% excited for the immigrants to come because, like I said, they've grown up watching Hollywood movies and they look at the West and they say, these people are normal, messed up people just like I am. And so they're sympathetic, right? So I'd say about 60% of Russians are excited for them to come. But I think there's about 40% that are a little bit bitter because of the history and because of the wars and because of Washington, D.C. And they're like, you know what? Forget you guys. We don't want you coming over here. So it can depend on who you bump into. I mean, for me in Moscow, I've almost always been treated well.
Джозеф, ну как тебя воспринимают там, американца такого, в России? Ты ходишь, может быть, чуть-чуть по-другому одет, говоришь по-другому, они слышат, что ты говоришь на английском, наверное, громко говоришь. Что местные россияне думают о тебе? Они меня любят. Я еще высокий такой, меня очень легко заметить. Илья, ваш гость, абсолютно прав. Обычные россияне разделяют между правительством США, правительством Британии и обычными британцами и обычными американцами. Плюс еще культура. Многие россияне выросли на голливудских фильмах. Они привыкли к американцам, британцам и так далее. Они прекрасно понимают, что это Байден и Рамер там мутят, и всякие Шольц и Макрон. А обычные американцы и западные люди, они нормальные.
But yeah, I think, the registration is a huge problem. And that's something that needs to be worked out for sure.
So, okay, we are talking then about mostly families, Western families, not young guys who has ambitions, or maybe they're without families. We're talking about mostly Christian families, traditional value families from United States, from Germany, from Canada. And the main motive for them, as you say, maybe saving their kids, so-called saving their kids from liberal values. And that's going to be their motto, to go through all difficulties and problems, because they will face some problems. They will, I mean, not a lot of problems, but still. One of the way to earn money, yeah, as you say, teaching English also may be a good thing, because I think we have empty niche of private so-called English-speaking clubs, not online, but it's a real thing. When you can go somewhere and there is like a little group, 10 people or something, and there is a native speaker from the West, and he's leading this group, like a regular discussions. Very powerful tool for studying English.
Yeah, I know some Westerners that do that. I would also say that my guess is it feels like about 20 to 30% of the interested applicants are young males that have not yet started their life. They're not yet married, but they want to get married and have a career and have kids. And they're looking at the woke West and they're saying, you know what? You know, I saw this show or this guy's show, and I see how normal Russia is.
Cappuccino, da. You can see through the water. You can see to the bottom.
And I want to go there. You know, we have a 27-year-old guy that my wife is helping get his paperwork straight. He's in Moscow, and he came here like a month and a half ago. So she's, you know, taking him to the different offices and getting everything filled out for him. And he's, you know, no kids, not married, and he's an IT specialist, and he's hoping to now start his new life here, which is what we want. Because I think for the Russians that are afraid of immigration from the West, they're thinking of woke liberal people coming here and messing up their country. But I try and tell them that's hardly going to happen, because it's so difficult and so expensive. And they already have what they want in the West if they're like a woke liberal person. They don't need to give themselves stress trying to move here. So the people that come here are only going to be the people that really want it at this point in time.
So it's called Samagon. It's a little bit stronger than vodka.
The Russian moonshine.
Сейчас подвинемся.
Probably online income may be also a good tip. So if you earn some money, you may put it, I don't know, in a stock market or something, in order to have independent income. By the way, not many people know it from the West. So they can open up debit card in, let's say, Kyrgyzstan bank. And there is a like very easy connection between Kyrgyzstan bank and, let's say, Sberbank. If they have some things in Western bank, they can transfer money to Kyrgyzstan bank. And from Kyrgyzstan bank, it's so easy to transfer it to Sberbank then. Very often people don't understand how to send money from let's say, Europe.
That's a good point. Another practical possibility is, I know that some people use this option where you can sign up for military service and you serve for a certain period of time, and that gives you your citizenship. So, you know, a lot of people are afraid to do that, for we know why. But if you're inclined to do such a thing, that is an option for you. And I can only imagine if you serve for 6 months or 2 years over here in a military fashion, you know, you're going to make lots of friends. You're going to learn the language pretty quickly. You know, you're probably going to be getting to know guys that are going to go on to be, you know, labor workers and real men and stuff like that. And so if you're thinking, well, I'm not a highly qualified specialist, I'm a plumber or I'm a house builder, you know, that is a potential path, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of growth in Russia. So, you know, there's going to be a need for, you know, blue collar workers as well.
It will fit to those, as you say, who is maybe a risky guy, inclined to. I know those people. They don't care. Yeah. They just don't care. I don't know. Maybe they're a little bit irrational sometimes, but I think I'm wrong. It's not irrationality. It's just like way of thinking. This is how they treat life. And for them, I agree. This way may be very good. There is a risk. But on the other hand, there are so many Western guys, they serve in US Army, let's say, in Canadian Army. And they also, from time to time, are sent to Iraq. They were sent to Iraq, to Afghanistan. Also good tip, by the way. So
Yeah.
online income, military service, English clubs, English teaching online or not online. And of course, fourth tip, 1 year before moving, focus on study Russian. А как у тебя с русским языком? Ты говоришь на нем или нет? Я знаю, что у тебя жена русская, это понятно. Ну а ты как? Это же совершенно другой алфавит. Это же такой сложный язык. Да, язык непростой, особенно для меня. Мне 50 лет, и, конечно, учить 50 русский, но это такое. Плюс мой канал на английском, я постоянно говорю на английском, это моя работа постоянная. Плюс люди видят меня на улице, понимают, что я американец, и хотят со мной поговорить тоже на английском. Но, в принципе, в Москве многие вывески, знаки, они дублируются на английском, поэтому если вы за 3 месяца до переезда, например, в Штатах начали учить русский, то, приехав в Москву, вы нормально будете себя чувствовать, а потом продолжите учить язык.
And so there's also IT as a possibility. There's also media as a possibility, which a lot of people might not know about. So if you're inclined, if you feel like a Hollywood type person, and you might think, well, that sounds kind of crazy, Joe, but I mean, the international world, the media world, it is still very much English based. And I was told this when I moved here, and I was meeting some people that work in the media, like even before I started my channel. As I've been doing my channel, we've been on different news programs, and sure enough, a news crew, and I won't say who, but it was like a high up crew. They came and they're, putting up lights and taping stuff to the walls in our house and getting ready to film us. And believe it or not, even though we're in Russia, the whole crew is speaking English to each other. So, if you are media inclined and you're a Westerner, that is a potential for you.
Yeah, good tip. And also for all those YouTubers, if they create content, let's say traveling or let's say something else, they can easily move to Russia and continue to do this. Or especially for those who are not dependent on traveling. Let's say he's doing inside home videos about some educational things, about some cooking stuff, and maybe his channel is like pretty popular in the United States. So he can easily continue to do it in Moscow or in St. Petersburg or anywhere. Even if we talk about traveling, being here, especially with all those new territories, for Western people, that's might be very interesting topic to look at.
Maxim has a Russian soup called borscht. Christoph, what is it, young man? Pelmeni?
Yeah, you bring a very, very good point, because we've now entered into a technological age where many people have careers where they can work anywhere, so you would just live somewhere else. And on top of that, Russia, they don't want everyone to move to Moscow or, a third of the people to move to St. Petersburg. They want to fill up the country. They want people to live everywhere. And there's lots of places that are not world famous that are nice places to live in Russia, like where you live, for instance. And so Russia makes it easier to move to those places over Moscow. They hand out so many quotas per territory, and it's harder to get a quota if you want to live in Moscow. So sometimes we have people that contact my wife and they're ready to come live in Moscow, but it turns out, they're from a smaller city. They would rather be in Nizhny Novgorod or be in Krasnodar. They just haven't thought about it, and it's even easier for her to get them a quota to go to these other places.
Check it out. I was able to read that myself. It says Saigon Vietnametskoye Cafe. So Vietnam Cafe.
You see how many ideas we have. As for adapting, one interesting thing we started to discuss it with Arend, it's a church. Because church is an international thing. If Western family, they're Christians and they don't know anybody here, though they can easily go to church, to local church. I mean, to several churches. They can try several churches. I understand many people are Protestants, Christian people in the West, but we have a lot of Protestant churches here also. It's going to be much easier for them to meet people there, because people there, they very often, they don't look, they understand you're foreigners, but they look at you a little bit different, because this brother sister thing is a little bit different, right, than on the street.
You're absolutely right. Going to church is a great way to get help, to have a support group. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, more people went to church. That's a good thing, in my opinion. But also the reality is you kind of had to. You didn't have big government. You had to go to church. You needed the community support. And as government has grown and taken the church's place in Social Security and all these government programs, the church has gotten smaller and more people have had the freedom to say, I'm agnostic or I'm atheist or whatever. But churches are still there. And that would be a great way, if you're moving from one country to another, to find a like-minded community. And it might not be the denomination that you're used to. But if, let's say, you're a Christian, I think we need to be open-minded to anyone who believes in Jesus and not be too stuck on the denomination.
If you can talk about it, but do you go to any church locally?
Yeah. I mean, because my wife and I met at the conference. And so then when she married me, she moved to the US and she just went to the same church that I go to, which is the same church she went to, but because it was an international church. And then when we moved, we just moved from our church location in Florida to our church location in Moscow. So, it would be considered a Protestant church. Now, Russia is officially like an Orthodox place. So they've got more Orthodox churches, and this is an Orthodox nation, and that should be respected. But they also have religious freedom. You're allowed to be different denominations here in Russia.
Do we have in Moscow the same church that you have in California or Florida?
Yeah. It gave us a continuity. We would go to the same church, whether we were in Florida or in Moscow. We would see the same people over and over again as we moved back and forth. So that also really helped us, because people say, oh, don't you miss the US? No, I don't. I mean, I've been here for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And I don't. And I think the reason why is because I went from a Christian community to a Christian community. So I don't feel like it was this huge change for me. And, I call myself a serious Christian. So meaning I'm a Christian before I'm a citizen of a country. So for me, I just went from one Christian culture to another. And I think if you're, let's say, agnostic and you're citizen of your country first, I understand that emotionally it's a big deal, this idea of moving to another country and to be raised a proud American. People tell me in the comments, you're a traitor sometimes. But I don't feel that way at all. I still like America. I hope America does well. But America's sick right now. And these things happen to countries, and it can take 30 to 70 years to turn around and do well. I don't have time to wait for the country to get better in 37 years. I'm alive now. I've got kids to raise now. So, that's what helps me to feel absolutely fine about moving and not feeling like I'm a traitor at all.
And what is your favorite restaurant here?
Sir?
SSSR?
Yes.
Oh, go.
If you have the money and the time, it might be good to vacation in Russia for a month and go to several different cities and get a feel for the place. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, Sochi is famous from the Olympics. And I think Rosa Hooter, which is like their ski village up there, is really, really nice. I went to Suzdal because that looked to me in the pictures like the stereotypical old Russia place. They have, I think, the biggest collection of wooden churches and old buildings. I went to Karelia, and that's beautiful. So that's another place I would check out if you really like nature and maybe you don't want to live in the city. That's like their big national park, kind of like Alaska. Kazan is half Muslim, half Christian. So if, let's say, you're not a Christian, but you're a religious person, you're thinking of moving to Russia, that's a possibility for you. There's just so many places. This country's so big, man. I mean, because you have a channel too. You're making videos in different places, and I realized, I've got about 28 years left, according to average life expectancy. If I keep doing this, I still couldn't go everywhere in this country. It's so big, and there's so many nice places. It's crazy, and they don't teach you about this in the West. It's just, here's cold, dark Moscow, and there's a city called St. Pete, which looks kind of like Western Europe, and that's about it. Russia is a cold place, but it's not deadly. It is survivable. It depends on where you live, and Russia has beaches too. I mean, we just went and did a big video series this summer at Gelendzhik. And I loved Gelendzhik. Russians joke about it, I guess, that it's not a great place because maybe in the Soviet times it wasn't. I don't know. But Gelendzhik was my favorite. It's so nice. It's good. It's this nice curved bay. You can be in the beach and you can see, stereotypical, beautiful looking, shoreline across the way from you. It's great.
In this place specifically, it's handmade.
It's like salty and sweet.
Yes, yes.
House of Kazakh.
So my point is Russia is not all cold all the time. And where I live in Moscow, I'm a big guy. I'm like 198 centimeters. I don't feel that cold. So if you're a larger person, it might not bother you that much. It doesn't bother me that much. You put on a good coat and you're fine. And I would say it snows, what would you say, like 5 months out of the year in Moscow, something like that, which is not 12 months out of the year.
Moscow metro station, it is everywhere, those stations right now. Moscow mayor, he is opening up, like, I don't know, within a year, 50 new metro stations, like every year. I don't know how he can do it, but it's growing
Constantly.
as crazy.
There are cranes everywhere, construction everywhere. I think they have 300 open stations right now. So yeah, you're right. I mean, you're traveling underground, you're working in a building, or you're working and living in your house. It's great.
And I agree. This 1 month test in Russia to check things around might be also a good tip for foreigners. Someone like, let's say the husband, he can go for a check, let's say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to check different cities if they're so focused and they're considering moving to Russia. So it might be a good move, right? To check Moscow, St. Petersburg.
Yeah, you could. I mean, if you can afford it, I think it'd be good to bring the whole family. But you're right. I mean, one person going would be better than no one going.
So basically, the conclusion is this. The first thing is motivation.
Secondly, a piece of pig fat.
The pickle, the dark red, and the pig fat.
Salo. Salo.
Очень вкусно.
And I agree with you 100%. Because if you really want to only save your money and you think it's going to be cheaper to live here, that's a poor motivation to move to Russia, let's say from Florida or from Germany, like Bavaria or like Berlin. Medicine, it's all about insurance in the United States. But if you have insurance, I guess you're going to be fine.
I mean, insurance is incredibly expensive. Health insurance, I was paying $2,500 a month for my family.
How much?
$2,500 a month for my family of 7 when I was living in Florida. So expensive. It's Russia. You don't even have to have it. You know, you can get supplemental insurance. But you know, I had a little health emergency. I did a video on it. I went to the emergency room here. You know, I didn't pay anything. You know, it wasn't like shiny wonderful, but it was absolutely acceptable.
Even if you want to buy a 1 year insurance, let's say for 2 adults and for 5 kids here, still it's going to be much cheaper. What about schools in the United States? Do you need to pay for a school, public school or not?
You can do public school or private school. Most people, of course, do public school, which is free. Private school you pay for. If it's ages 0 to 5, they're going to have to stay home, or you're going to have to pay for childcare. And that can be, you know, when I left, childcare was like $700 a month for your child. So you're talking about paying $700 a month for 5 years for each child that you have before they're due to go to grade school. School is not free in the US until you turn 5.
Even public?
There is no public childcare. So ages 0 to 5, there's no public. It's all private.
Джозеф, а как твои родственники и друзья в Штатах отреагировали на то, что ты решил полностью переехать в Россию? Ну, конечно, они переживали за меня, просили меня вернуться, говорили, возвращайся. Но я не вернулся. Нет, я решил остаться. Прошло несколько месяцев. Я понял, что мое решение было правильное. Да, все здесь хорошо, все нормально, и так хорошо, что я остался.
When I chose to stay, I lost contact with a lot of people because my friends were like, oh my gosh, Joe, this special military operation just started. You got to come back. And I was like, come back? Well, no, everything looks fine here. I mean, I am concerned, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going back. And so they'd send me like maybe one more message and I would still say, look, everything's fine here. And then they just stop sending me messages because they don't want to hear it, you know, because the propaganda is that thick. So yeah, I don't get bothered by it because Americans, they'll, if you say no, they won't keep arguing. Because in America, we're trained to be polite and smile with everyone, even our close friends. Our priority is to be friendly first and honest second. In Russia, it's the reverse. Russians are honest first and friendly second, hopefully.
Sometimes
I prefer balance. I don't like these blunt statements, for example, from some people when they disagree with you. To me, that's a good respectfully say different things. Like 100% right you have to express your opinion. I have different opinion. Let's stay on this ground. I respect your opinion. You respect my opinion, even though we have, let's say, 10 disagreements, but then we have 15 agreements. So let's talk about them. That's why many people, for example, I check comments under our video with Aaron. So they say, like, we don't need them. We don't need them here, Western people, because we have so many problems and they're coming. And I was just like, so what? If people are bringing inside new resources, new knowledges, like IT technologies, like IT approaches, for example, as Aaron, maybe he will create something new.
You're correct. And Russia, I understand, Russians are bitter, some of them, because of the past, but technically they do need these people. I mean, Russia has a population issue. They need more people. And so if you have like-minded, culturally similar people that want to come here, and they're going to want to be here because it's hard. If they're here successfully, they went through it and they mean it and they're serious and they want to be assimilated. They want to be like you. And, their grandkids are going to be Russian. And so this is a great opportunity for Russia to save people from around the world that think like them. And it's also a great opportunity for Russia to have the population they need, if that makes sense.
It's normal.
Мы так не говорим на английском. Normal это значит обычно. Не нормально, а обычно.
Меня папа спросил по-английски.
Да, по-английски это будет...
Нет, папа меня спрашивает
Да, на английском это не будет норма.
А ты видео по-русски говоришь. Она просто тебе объясняет.
Да, ты понимаешь?
Absolutely. And not only population growth, but also cultural exchange, knowledge exchange. You have maybe different experience, especially you spent like 6 years working for Hollywood. Maybe channel first, our government channel will confront it and they will say, we are much better than Hollywood. But still, you have your experience, right? And you may exchange it with somebody, right? Or at least show it in your videos. You see how, guys, I see things. You can do the same. You can copy me. That's a nice way to do. So I agree.
And in some ways, Russia can be like an ark for the world and save these traditional family values cultures. I mean, I went to a German village in Russia also this summer, and it was like I was in Bavaria. It was wonderful. I did a cool video about it, and in the comments I was getting, I think from some Germans, it was like, well, they saved our culture, and there it is in Russia, because it's not like that over here anymore. In Berlin, it's crazy. It's anti-traditional family values. You don't get to see Germany like that anymore in Germany, which is sad, but I'm glad, that someone is saving it. Now, I've learned from the comments that does scare some Russians, because they're like, why are you coming over here and opening up your country? If you want your country here, just go stay in your country. But what I want them, hopefully these Russians to realize is, according to law, the kids are still going to have to be taught Russian in school. We're not talking about these people living here and not becoming Russian. They're still going to have to assimilate, but they might have their own little village that helps them feel comfortable. Just like in New York, you have had little Russian communities. They've all since been renamed to Ukrainian communities, which is weird, but yeah. So it's like it could be a village and a tourism industry. Russians could go see what it's like to be in these places.
It's what Arendt was talking to me about. So he's thinking about to open up eco village. I'm sure it's going to be kind of maybe a little bit traditional, not Canadian village, but still that kind of style partially. And for people, if he managed to do this, for people, it will be, even in terms of tourism, attractive to visit that Canadian family farmer place, right?
Yeah, like American frontier style.
Yeah, to check things out, maybe just like even to buy some things from their local store. Maybe, as he said, they will come and help us to work a little bit with animals. People would love it because it's experience. You're getting emotional experience. So all those villages, small cultural things, even clubs, cultural centers, also good way to attract people in order to exchange culture. It's all for
Right.
development, not for cultural attack from other country
Right.
to another country. No. Anyway, you think this initiative from Putin is very good thing and it will have its effect?
Yeah, I think it's very good. It's going to take time because, like I said, we're just at the beginning, and we have to lay the track and figure it out. But I think it could be so great for these families and for Russia.
Вау! О боже, ух ты! Спасибо, молодой человек.
Перед тем, как кушать, хорошо нужно перемешать, чтобы не подгорело.
Спасибо.
Let's hope more people will come. We will see more people are coming, like families. I hope they will go through all those difficulties. And again, if they have motivation to save their kids, it's manageable, it's doable, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're living through history, man.
Not easy time, not easy time. Governments, they have their own game, right? As that person said, by the way, that the Roundtable program, the Western guy, he was in the studio. So he said very interesting thing. I liked what he said. He said, в этом есть надежда. Я серьезно говорю, я вижу в этом надежду. Потому что в то время, когда наши правительства воюют между собой, устраивают эти конфликты, посмотрите, обычные люди из разных стран могут находить общий язык, могут быть добры друг к другу. И это гораздо-гораздо сильнее, чем любые идеологические разности между людьми. Потому что основа это очень мощная, это человеческая натура. Могут люди многое преодолеть, многие непонимания мы можем преодолеть. So basically, we can overcome all those games, right? And we can focus on other person, let's say soul, not nationality, not the color of his passport, but like you're human, I'm human. Yeah, our governments are fighting right now, but I mean, we don't need to hate each other, right?
Съемщик, самый лучший съемщик. Блогер. Давай, быстрее. Недаром Москва, спаленная пожаром, мой кожа души отдана.
Спасибо, Россия.
Yeah, I mean, World War II only lasted. It was awful, but it was still a period of time that came to an end. And I guess we're approaching 3 years, right? And if Trump is president, that's going to change things, and we'll see.
I hope so. He will get involved somehow. I don't know how, and I hope he will not change his mind. Trump is Trump. He is unpredictable.
Yeah, that's the good and the bad of Trump. I mean, he's certain that he's going to end it. And people say, how can he be so certain? Well, I mean, if the U.S. funding ends, that's it.
Europe may continue to fund.
Yeah, but can they do it without U.S. support, you think?
I mean, they can do, but it's not going to be that efficient. It's going to be only half, I guess. Anyway, we're saying to foreigners, if you think about it, you better try, because life is short, as it says, right?
Oh, very good. Life is too short.
So life is too short. It's better to use your chance right now. This decree, why not to try, right? As you said, we live on it now. You're 50, I'm 46.
Yeah, learning multiple languages, going to a new country.
Not that easy. So better if you're like, let's say 45, you better try now.
3 years, I believe, is the time frame you have to get acclimated, get a job, get a place to live before you would have to go back, which is plenty of time. A year is probably all you would need. But yeah, you have the 3, I believe.
So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I definitely want to stay in touch. Maybe I'll have you on my show at some point.
At some point, yeah. And if I go to Moscow, we can, I don't know, we can shoot some video together. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, we can have some fun. I love to do videos on the street, running around and seeing new things.
Have a great day and stay in touch.
You got it, pal.
Окей, bye-bye.
Народ, ну вот такой мой разговор с Джозефом. Ссылку на канал я оставлю внизу. Ссылку на эту деятельность его жены по иммиграционным вот этим услугам тоже я оставлю в описании под видео, вдруг кому-то понадобится. Если вы иностранец, живете здесь в России, у вас семья здесь, вы переехали, вы хотите поделиться тоже своим опытом, потому что кому-то это может пойти на пользу, может кто-то посмотрит, да, из-за рубежа и вдохновится вашим примером и решит переехать сюда, в Россию. Напишите мне на почту, мы запишем совместное видео, совместный разговор, и это послужит кому-то во благо. Повторюсь, я считаю, чем больше хороших, самых разных людей из разных стран приезжают сегодня в Россию и трудятся, делают что-то полезное на благо России, тем лучше для России, для нашего общества. Это мое мнение. У кого-то мнение может быть другое. Пусть будут разные мнения, и, как говорится, главное, чтобы было мирное небо над головой. Поэтому всем удачи, пока и мирного неба над головой всем нам.
Понимаете, россияне не хотят, чтобы сюда приезжали иностранцы только ради своей выгоды, которые не хотят вкладываться в общество, которые не хотят как бы служить, а служить можно по-разному. Поэтому здесь вопрос настроя иностранцев, которые переезжают. Нужно будет служить, нужно будет вкладываться в общество. Это ваш новый дом будет. В конце концов, ваши внуки, правнуки точно будут 100% русские здесь.